So our next presentation is called Convergence, Collaboration, and Commercialization, Shaping the Future of the Modeling and Simulation and Training Market. And it's being given to us by Ms. Sam Burns. She is a principal in the Aerospace, Defense, and Government Practice at Oliver Wyman. Sam has advised defense clients on over 100 engagements spanning market strategy, technology, road mapping, business model optimization, and investment due diligence, with a focus on mission-critical innovation. Please welcome Ms. Sam Burns.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here and honored to follow some excellent co-panelists, so great job. As Bob mentioned, a lot of the sessions in the Next Big Thing forum over the next few days is going to focus on disruptions that we might expect over the next 5 to 10 years in emerging technology and technology disruptions and modeling, simulation, and training. The one thing that we wanted to focus on in this talk is how to put modeling, simulation, and training into context of a broader defense market that is also teed up for significant transformation and change, particularly when we think about from a buying behavior, from and divorcement and evolution of software buying behavior from hardware, thinking through shifting balances in investment in capital, risk appetite, collaboration, and competition. So what we've done in this session is we'll walk through what we see as kind of the macro changes that are driving shifts in the defense market over the next 5 to 10 years. Talk a little bit in terms of how this would influence emerging technology go-to-market strategies from a modeling, simulation, and training perspective. But then also think through as well, what new roles will MS&T players fill in this new market and ecosystem, and what are new opportunities that are presented. I think our panelists before this session did a great job of highlighting, kind of the first point on this slide too, is the lines between traditional market segments that you would think about for modeling, simulation, and training are converging and blurring. And one thing that we end up talking with our clients a lot about is how to think through and flexibly navigate the types of market segments that modeling, simulation, and training can be touching with AI, with digital threads, digital convergence. The opportunity in thinking through from a product capability and market segment perspective, being able to toggle between those presents a lot of growth vectors and opportunities moving forward for clients. So the first macro trend I wanted to tee up here is changing buying behavior that we're seeing across the Department of War. And if we look, just in 2025, it's been a highly transformative year in terms of acquisition behavior. From a Congress perspective, we saw the tee-up of the Forge Act and the Speed Act, executive orders this spring targeting acquisition behavior, really culminating last month in the DOW's rollout of a new acquisition transformation strategy. We won't be able to go through all of those reforms today. There's nearly 40 that are laid out, but wanted to touch on a few key themes. And one theme is, as we navigate an acquisition and buying behavior environment over the next 5 to 10 years, teeing up a potential paradigm shift in speed of capability fielding, going from, potentially decades and years to field a capability from a need to an order of months. There's a few reforms that are targeting this priority, an emphasis on speed. one of which being the maturation and scale of the middle tier acquisition pathway, again focusing on streamlined processes that can field a capability kind of in the order of 2 to 5 years. One thing that the acquisition strategy also tees up is alternative and new acquisition pathways that could deliver rapid new kill chains in under 24 months. So when we think about this future where processes are streamlined and traditional barriers or frictions in the acquisition process are alleviated and new capabilities can be fielded at rapid timescales, an important question, particularly for the training simulation community is when and to what extent does human readiness become a pacing function for the ability to field new technology? When we think about and look at the acquisition strategy discussion, there's a lot of conversation in terms of assessing technology readiness, assessing manufacturing readiness, but understanding and the capabilities and expertise that this community has on human readiness, training, trust, usability of innovative technology is going to be critical to actually deliver on this priority of speed of capability. And to the extent that when thinking about emerging technologies and bringing that to market, this community can think through and bring through that expertise of human factors into those systems is going to be key. Then just quickly, one other theme that we're seeing is the potential or the intended shift from program level management to portfolio acquisition executives and empowering program leaders to more flexibly make trades at a mission level and prioritize across mission outcomes. From a MS&T perspective, this tees up interesting strategic questions in terms of what tools and resources are going to be required to empower program leaders to make those decisions. But then when we think on an industry side, there's also significant questions that arise in terms of traditional industry go-to-market, thinking a lot about how to frame your solution with respect to program requirements. Now, going to market and bringing your solution to market, you'll need to consider much more broad trade space of your solution within the context of a portfolio and mission. And again, the unique expertise from this community in terms of mission engineering and trades might find new application and relevance in thinking through how to bring new technology into this broader and more flexible trade space. Next, I want to quickly talk through, I think, a theme that has become evident in the prior two panelists' talks of a shift when we think through the defense market and the nature of warfare in the next 5 to 10 years as increasingly software defined, software reconfigurable. As we think through a market where software is getting divorced from hardware and capability upgrades and refresh can be delivered at software timescales, a key indicator or precedent to that is the ability for the Department of War to effectively acquire and buy software capabilities. That's an area where we are seeing increased momentum and traction. Few indicators here. One, the scaling and adoption of the software acquisition pathway, growing from just 5 programs 5 years ago up to north of 80 programs this past year. When you look at those programs, 8 of those 82 are directly training specific, and then over half touch a lot of the other mod and sim applications that we were discussing in the last panel too, in terms of decision support and C2. Then looking at the ability to roll out and leverage DevSecOps across the enterprise and agilely develop and deploy new software is also growing in capability. We can see through the rise of DOW software factories, again, growing kind of exponentially over the past few years, really in a kind of a more organic upstart nature. And the makeup of these software factories being spread across developing and delivering of mission critical software to developing kind of infrastructure as code, and more training and education type capabilities as well. So when we think about where this goes, from a market perspective, a few key questions that we're hearing, from our clients and partners is, one, how do MS&T players develop solutions and capabilities that will equip training and readiness in an environment where capability is software defined and rapidly reprogrammable from both a trust perspective, but then also a training perspective to be able to leverage and operate in a more software-defined environment. I think there's also a key question here in terms of, as the Department of War becomes more software savvy, what opportunities does that present in terms of thinking through, the key value of, MS&T solutions, and really thinking through the value of, the data separate from the algorithms, separate from the integrated solutions, really honing delivery models that will be optimized for the need and for your solution. So moving on to a theme that we're seeing in terms of a shifting market environment where taking on greater risk could yield greater return, an environment where the DOW has expressed indication of wanting to increase competition across the industrial base, break traditional vendor lock, incentivize the industrial base to invest more IRAD, put more skin in the game up front for greater reward, as well as invest in enabling infrastructure and CapEx to support that. We can see this across, changes in acquisition approaches and in space and satellites, for example, with the transport and tracking layer, going to a more tranche spiral approach. Similarly with CCA, or Collaborative Combat Aircraft, adopting a tranched approach where, maybe if you don't get selected for the first tranche, invest IRAD to be able to compete for, the second tranche of capability as well. So in an environment where we're seeing increased incentive for skin in the game, we're also seeing growing industry teaming and consortium building as well. And this is an area where MS&T providers can play potentially a key force multiplying role across these industry consortia when we're thinking about autonomy, innovative missile defense solutions as well. How can these players and solutions help amplify teams that are investing in solutions up front to bring new capabilities to defense? And we're also seeing evolution of buying behavior and solicitation mechanisms that will reward that upfront investment, levers like commercial solution offerings and openings to bring more commercial first approaches to market. Another kind of interesting dynamic that we're seeing in this space, particularly when it comes to non-traditional providers, is to what extent is modeling, simulation, and training really necessary to help support go-to-market for players in areas like autonomy, robotics, and AI? We're seeing kind of an increased trend towards this being a critical capability to have in-house to help kind of do the chicken or the egg of market making, informing the requirements, informing the ConOps, and kind of showcasing your capabilities, even when the market and the requirements aren't yet mature. So I think this is also an area that will see some competitive mate dynamics arise of, as you engage with autonomy providers or space providers, thinking through how can your capabilities help inform and shape and mature across these new platforms and markets, specifically in this kind of market making arena. Another big topic that we've seen this year in indicators of a potential step change in international investment in defense over the next 5 and 10 years. Just as an indicator here, showing forecast in European defense budgets, representing the goal of 3% of GDP by 2030, up to 3.5% by 2035. When we think about growth in international investment over the next 5 to 10 years, there's also important questions that arise in terms of, one, from a modeling, simulation, and training perspective, how can solutions and providers think through the role that allied capabilities need to play in capabilities like training and mission planning? So my panelists before mentioned, the DASH initiative and the value of advanced mission planning and battle management tools and being able to showcase joint all-domain capabilities. In an environment where international investment and capabilities are evolving and dynamic, those tools should also be thinking through how can we be bringing in and showing how to best utilize those allied investments. That's both from a training and simulation perspective, as well as a kind of mission engineering and architecture development as well. So, an interesting indicator of this was Space Force's rollout of an international partnership strategy this past spring, which really spoke to that value, or spoke to that point of needing to understand where partners are investing in their space capabilities and how to be integrated by design and bringing in those capabilities from both an investment perspective as well as an industrial-based perspective into thinking about the mission, the architecture, and how you can train and operate together. So I'll close on teeing up some emerging technology areas as well. When we talked about modeling, simulation, and training, I teed up, it can kind of be tricky to talk about this as a market in itself because it touches so many different applications and markets. But then when we think about modeling and simulation with respect to other emerging technologies as well, MS&T can be both an application of emerging technologies and an enabler to other emerging technologies. So I pulled forward, just as an example, the DOW CTO recently rolled out kind of a down-selected list of what the Department of War is framing as the critical technology areas, of highest impact that will drive R&D, defense R&D investment, moving forward in the near term. And I think, applied artificial intelligence is a great example of where, modeling and simulation is definitely an enabler to AI when we're thinking about gaining trust and informing ConOps and training and capabilities like autonomy or mission planning. But it's also a key application, and we talked about that as well, of the many different flavors that AI can be feeding and enhancing solutions, and I think we'll see that across the exhibit floor outside. Quantum and battlefield intelligence is an interesting area as well. It encompasses advanced sensing, advanced networks. And from a modeling and simulation and training perspective, this is a really interesting technology vector to be considering in terms of your own emerging technology and partnership approach, because this is really, what's the next generation of the type of data that we'll have access to for modeling and simulation? And how do we understand and track that roadmap of the sources and the flavor of the data, how that data is going to move in order to have technologies and solutions that can best enable and support that moving forward. Contested logistics, also a very interesting bucket to flag from a modeling, simulation, and training perspective, because this has been noted as a gap in the past and present in terms of how to effectively model and represent and include contested logistics in mission planning, in wargaming, and now thinking through how do you kind of weave in evolving business models, industrial-based policy, and emerging technologies and emerging ConOps into contested logistics strategy for modeling and simulation could be a key opportunity area that we've definitely been having discussions about moving forward. And then finally, with scaled hypersonics, directed energy and biomanufacturing, did want to tee up the role of modeling and simulation in terms of a tool and to help mature and think through, from a digital engineering perspective, how do these technologies and breakthrough technologies feed into future ConOps moving forward? So with that, those were the key trends that I wanted to talk through today, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Fantastic. Hey, if I don't mind, go back to your last slide. I think that was your money slide, because I saw so many people take pictures of that one, so well done on that synthesis. So with that, so those are the critical technology areas where the investments, significant investments are going to be in the Department of War. For those perhaps in this audience that are maybe having a hard time seeing how their innovations are mapping to that, are these spending on the critical technologies areas, those are just being priority? How do you see spending perhaps in maybe some of the non-critical technology areas, but perhaps still important for like readiness is that going to be, do you think that's going to be like the current spend level, and then this 30% plus up is going towards these? What's your read on that?
Yeah, I think there's a few different elements to that. One, I think to your point, there's not a lot of explicit call out in terms of modeling, simulation, and training in these critical technology areas. That doesn't mean that there's not a role for that, but I think it does put the burden on, really thinking through, how your technologies and capabilities scaffold against and enable kind of the broader emerging technology ecosystem. Under the hood of many of these technologies also exist, MS&T capabilities as well, and interdependencies in terms of those types of solutions. And then there was another part of your question that I wanted to answer.
Was it about the 30% and the continued level spend?
Yes, yeah. So I think the other point to that is, and kind of getting back to the earlier trends that we teed up, where we're seeing the market shift and go. Yes, this is where the R&D priorities are trending for defense investment, but we're also looking at a picture where industry investment and IRAD to enable and anticipate needs is going to be really critical. So thinking through and not following necessarily, what are exactly the needs and indicators and CRAD that we can get to develop solutions, but balancing, what are the needs and where can we make smart bets to deliver needed technology to the DOW. I don't know what I did.
That's all right. Anybody else have questions? All right, let's give Sam a big hand.